let's do another chapter spotlight. And many of you probably missed the first one because it was for chapter 3 of Sanctus Sarantium. And, no one could watch it. I haven't convinced most of you to read Sanctus Sarantium yet. And I'm going to do another one that most of you can't watch because this is for chapter 32 of Ship of Magic. I would just like to spotlight how amazing I think this chapter is. I don't think, there's some chapters where, everyone who's read it would know. If I'm the Honor is Dead chapter of Words of Radiance, I don't need to do that one. There's a certain wedding in a Storm of Swords. Whatever. The second last chapter of Changes. This is seemingly a very random chapter. It's in the book. It might be my favorite chapter in this book, which is one of my favorite books, though. So this is going to be full spoilers for Ship of Magic by Rob and Hobb. If you've only read Ship of Magic and have not read past it in Realm of the Elderlings, that's fine. I'll not be spoiling future things. But I just want to talk about this chapter because I think it really highlights what are, to me, the main thematic points of the Live Ship Traders while taking a supporting character and fleshing them out incredibly, and also, I think, giving insight into how bad things continue to happen in the world and how we might have more power to stop it than we think. All in a chapter that's not that long. So, if you have not read Ship of Magic, go read it. Get out of here. If you have read Ship of Magic, let's talk about this random chapter. Which first I'm going to remind you what happens in it. Because you are probably a normal person who is not yes, chapter 32 of Ship of Magic. I, of course, know what happens in that, and I don't have to look. Let's get into it. So basically, this chapter starts with Wintrow. It's pretty late in the book. It's kind of right before the climax of the novel happens. The end of this chapter kind of kicks off the climax of Kennet chasing down the Vivassia. And it starts with Wintrow below decks, and the Vivassia has a bunch of slaves, and he's just trying to offer whatever help he can to anyone there. All he has is a rag and seawater, because it's not like they have medical supplies. And he runs into someone whose voice he recognizes from the monastery, who's Saadar. And Saadar's kind of just wants him to take one of the slaves there was bitten by a rat and is dying, and he just is saying can he go out on the deck and die out in the open in his final moments. And Wintrow goes and talks to Gandry, who's Kyle's first mate, and convinces him to do that. And then Saadar, when Gendry comes down, Saadar kills him, and then they start the mini revolution on the Vivassia. The revolt, it's on one ship. Is revolt the right word? All these words feel like society-wide things. If this ship is a society, then it was a slave revolt. And people are like, okay, let's go kill Kyle. And then it cuts to Kennet at the end, with Edda, and they're chasing down the Vivassia, and Kennet is only has one functional leg, and Edda basically takes control of the boat with Kennet guiding her, and it's a thing. But the main part I want to talk about is the Wintrow part of this chapter, because I think Gandry is, in terms of both how well written of a character he is and how complex he feels, how thematically important he is relative to the amount of page time he has, he's pretty off the charts good. 'Cause to me, this chapter, when I read it, it felt true on this is how things like slavery continue to exist. Because it's always humanity has done lots of completely horrible things, and it feels like it should take everyone in over there, everyone doing the horrible thing, to be completely horrible people. And it's always weird because most people I know aren't horrible people, and I think most people are actually pretty good. And it feels implausible to say that everyone was just horrible. But I think what we get from this is that there are a few horrible people, and then a lot of complacent people who just kind of go with it, who aren't willing to make a stand because they don't realize that everyone else is also, most of the people there are just being complacent and are not needlessly cruel. And Gendry, so when Wintrow, well, first there's a really beautiful scene where they describe the monastery, and Saadar is kind of like, has the, like, you can't not be, once you're a priest of Sa, no one can escape it. I'm sure he will not do anything sketchy for the rest of the series. And Wintrow finds it extremely difficult to go up and ask the shipmates to fulfill this request. And I think it's very, like, intuitively, it would be a hard thing to go ask to do. But then he kind of gets his courage of just, like, why the hell aren't I asking? Like, what's the worst thing they're going to do? And then he kind of asks it this way. Like, he goes up to Gandry. And Gandry is Kyle's shipmate, for those who don't remember Gandry. He's, like, the Kyle's second mate who's, like, kind of a decent person. He has two main, like, named people who work under him, the one who's even worse than he is, and Gendry, who's, like, trying to help the Vivassia, and in the previous chapter, the Vivassia was like, you should go on another ship, and he's been, like, pretty decent, but he's still engaging in this slavery, like, he helped with it, and, he's two lines in his internal monologue in this chapter that have really stuck with me, because he's thinking about how the Vivassia is going mad, and then it goes to, perhaps I was the one who was truly mad, because a key sat at my belt and I did nothing. And then there's another one where he realized he was fighting against providing mercy for this slave who was dying. And he kind of is asking himself why. Like, why do I instinctively not want to do this? And it's because if he realizes that once he treats one of them as a person, like, by providing this mercy, he can't continue to trick himself into thinking that these aren't all people. And it makes it harder for him to dehumanize them and think of them as merchandise. And even as he's going down, he confronts this, but he can't fully confront it, because he goes down with the excuse, the thing that finally, like, he says when he goes down to agree to help this person is, well, if there's a fever down there, I should investigate that, because we don't want other people to get a fever. And this has just stuck with me for a long time. Like, I think this is probably the best written version of what's going on in someone's head who has been a decent person their entire life and is engaging in horrible actions. Yeah, and then to make it really, when he goes down and he unlocks them, Wintrow has, like, a lantern, and he puts it down to provide help for someone, and then Saadar picks up the lantern and hits Gantry in the head with it, and they kill Gantry, and they start to escape, and this is what starts the revolt. Which, it's worth noting, it was never one of his reasons to not go down there that he'd be dangerous and killed. Like, that wasn't one of the reasons he provided, and it ends up happening. And this has always just stuck with me as a very tragic chapter, because it really explores someone who's just seems to be a decent person, both participating in evil and then ending up being killed when he goes to not participate in evil. And also, one of the reasons is he gets Wintrow to relock the cage, because, like, the chain is all covered in, like, disgust, because it's a slaver ship, and he doesn't want to touch it. He wants to keep himself separate from this evil that he's participating in. And if he'd locked it himself, Wintrow wouldn't have put down the lantern, and he wouldn't have died. And he's a very minor character in this series, and it's just always stuck with me thematically as a person. I think this chapter is, when people say, like, this chapter changed who you are as a person, I think this chapter changed the way I think about the world. And I just wanted to give it a spotlight, because it's one that I very, very rarely heard talk about. And also the Kenneth stuff after is brilliant, because Kenneth is a brilliantly done character. But the Wintrow part of this chapter specifically, I just wanted to make this video about it. It was not super clear. I just reread it to make this. And most of you couldn't watch the first chapters probably, but let me know if you enjoy these, because I find them fun to make. I know not very many people can watch them, but generally I can't talk just because I'm reviewing entire books. I'm not able to talk about chapter in this much, like, with this much specificity. But I think I'm going to do more of these. I don't know what the next chapter I'm going to do, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day, everyone. Ship of Magic is so good. When I reread it, I was like, I like Ship of Magic a weird amount. Like, it's higher on it's like my second favorite Realm of the Otherlings book. And on reread, I was like, let's find out if I'm crazy to have it this high. And then I read it and reread it. I was like, no, everyone else is crazy. This book is so good. Have a nice day, everyone.